might it look like for our church? By golly, if you've ever been in most churches, the Sunday school teachers are all women, or most of them. Bible school teachers are mostly women. Choir teachers or instructors are mostly women. I'm seeing a pattern here. Nursery workers, preschool workers, they're women. It's no wonder that men grow up and think that they're not responsible for those jobs in the church because they weren't given that. Now, we do have some faithful...
It's almost as if the fact that we don't have a lot of men in childcare, and all the fears that are wrapped up in that, and how those fears sometimes are just broadcast, even if it's unwarranted.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a man and you want a job here at a child care facility, why is that? And so it's like we set it up to separate men from children as much as possible. And how the enemy has just, definitely monopolized on that situation, in so many ways. You use the word intentional. And I like that word because it's not like a switch that we can flip, oh, I need to focus on my kids from now on, because the world doesn't turn off. Society is still geared toward men not being with their children. It's the way the world works right now. And the enemy is still trying to drive a wedge in between fathers and their children. And so we can't just simply say, okay, let's do that. So it's going to be hard, and it's hard work. It's not supposed to be easy. And so that all to say, basically, that quit your whining. It's going to be hard.
Suck it up and man up.
Don't use, here's all my issues, here's all the reasons I can't. We know there's reasons. You and I have the same reasons. And it's just, we have to find a way to break through this barrier.
And people say, the things I want to pass on to my children. I often say to my daughters, it's not my job to make you happy. It's my job to help mold you into a productive, caring, compassionate, contributing member of society and of the church. So what they like or don't like often doesn't play into it. What they want or don't want often doesn't play into it. Because they're 8, 9, 10, 15, 16, they don't know what they want. And they're selfish. They want what's best for them or what they think they want.
Right.
And so the intentional effort becomes being a father who's willing to ask the tough questions and doing the things that don't come easy and are hard. It is hard to punish your children or set rules for your children and consistently hold them accountable when they don't meet the standard that you have clearly set for them. It's easy to look the other way whenever you've asked 5 girls to do 5 chores and come home and 4 of them are done and 1 of them's not. Well, they got 4 out of 5. Isn't that okay? No, it's not okay. Because your father or your mother asked you to do this. Do it. But it's easier to say, they must have had something else that was going on. It's hard to hold your children accountable. What I find, though, is my daughters, most of the time I think they don't listen. But what I find is they will tell anecdotes or stories about their friends. Don't have a particular one in mind, but they'll say, and can you believe that she did or she said, and I told her that just wasn't right. And it would be something that I had rehearsed with her. It may have to do with a boy. I told her I'd never let a boy treat me that way. It's stuff that I've told them. My parents would get all over me if I got a C in that class. Well, C's average, right? And they say things. And so I think they pick them up. I think for our church, we would see a church that you couldn't keep people out of. Single mothers would be knocking down our door to have their children influenced and cared for and loved by compassionate, godly men. They absolutely would. Families would want their dads or their husbands to be engaged in ministry at a church that had a heart of compassion for children by fathers.
So what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're getting at is if the hearts of the fathers were turned back towards the hearts of the children, it would start to change things in major ways. Some of the things that the church has been praying for, some of the things the church has been striving for and hoping for, and some of the promises even that God has handed down to the church about revival and renaissance, that about the direction He wants to take things.
And the book of Malachi is all about, if you read it, the first 3 chapters, God talks to the priests who are in charge of the church and rebukes them, and then He talks about the people, and then He talks about the priests caring for the people. But the whole purpose is motivated by love, by the Father for His children, and it's all about renewal and restoration. It doesn't have to do with punishment. God doesn't want to punish.
Right.
He wants to renew and restore. And we're the ones who distort the relationship because, quite honestly, it's easier not to be an intentional father, especially if we're not an affectionate father, whose father wasn't affectionate to us, whose father wasn't affectionate to him. It's easy to overlook the fact that tucking your daughter or son into bed at night and hugging them tight and kissing them on the forehead, on the cheek, or on the lips, whatever your family custom is, it's easy to overlook what that says to a child and what it says to a child when you don't do it.
And it may not be comfortable, but it's paramount.
We're not called to be comfortable, are we?
No, we're not. I keep getting this picture in my head of a big wagon that has just got like a colossal cable, anchored to its axle, and it's just anchored. Like something that you would tie a ship to a dock with, that kind of thing. And this is that problem that God's talking about. The horses are ready. How many people are ready, to do stuff? And it's just like, this is holding the church back, from her destiny. That there's so much that God wants to do, and so many places He wants to take us, and things that He wants to do for the world through us. But He cannot do it because we're tied down. It hinders us. And it's just, this is the most phenomenal thing, that it's so misunderstood and so forgotten. Well, it's Old Testament, right? We don't need to read that. And yet he alludes to the fact that this is what the whole New Testament came around for.
And the whole New Testament was based on a relationship between a father and his son. And, we can debate all of the gender-neutral discussions that you want, and whether or not it has to do with the fact of the timing and all of this. But the fact remains that mothers are so good at caring for children, supporting families, keeping things in line, teaching our children Bible stories, and working in the church, simply not because it's what they were made to do, but it's what they're forced to do because we have fathers who won't step up and do it. And I'm convinced, along with you, that we have a responsibility as pastors, as men in the church, to positively encourage fathers to care for their families, not beat them over the head as to why they're not a good father, but encourage them to be better fathers. But also, it's incumbent upon the men who are trying to step up and fulfill these responsibilities, not just to do that for our children, but to do that for other children, particularly young boys, who maybe they don't have the best father in the world. Maybe they don't have a father. But whenever they get to be 30, they can't unload all their bags and say, well, my dad didn't do it for me. Well, frankly, you had men who modeled it for you. If we'll step up and do that. And I don't think as men that we're responsible for just only caring for our own children. If we submit to God's wishes, we're not only to turn our hearts to our own children. It doesn't say, it says children to their fathers, fathers to their children. But if I had to guess, it doesn't say that in Hebrew. I'm guessing it says, turn the hearts of fathers to children.
We'll look it up and we'll find out.
Yeah.
And then we'll post it.
And so we're obligated to care for children. We're obligated to love children so that we can quit this cycle of fathers abdicating their responsibilities.
Now, I don't I know I have a couple maybe. Don't have a large segment of my audience that would be considered fathers. In just a few words, what's the one thing that this audience could pray? What would you suggest we pray for?
I actually have 3 things that this audience can pray for.
Okay.
The first is obvious. Pray for fathers. Pray for your father. Pray for the fathers of friends that you have. That their hearts will turn back to their children. The second thing would be to pray and ask God, what is your responsibility in this? I had a young lady who had a tense time with her father, and my response to her was, well, what's your responsibility in that? I think you're old enough that you should be able to let your father know, we don't have the relationship that I think I want. I want to spend more time with you. I don't think of too many fathers that would say, if their child said, Dad, I really want us to spend more time together. I don't think there's too many fathers that would say, you know what, just don't have it. I think most fathers would be dying for the day that their teenage and college-age children would say to them, Dad, we haven't spent enough time together. So pray what God would put on your hearts. Pray for fathers. And then the other thing is pray for the church. And probably we need to remind everybody that the church is not a building. The church is not an institution. The church is a community of believers united in common faith and in common ministry and mission. So the church is you. And so if you want to see the church change, and you want to see the church have an emphasis on fathers, then the third thing that I would ask you to pray about is pray that you and me and those in the church will have a heart for doing our part to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children.
Once again, this is Pastor Chris Neikirk, and I'm David Warren. Thank you for watching the Refuge City Radio.